This is the second video for Chapter 8 for the exam review, and in this part of Chapter 8 we were multiplying terms and then still working on what we did in the other part where we're adding and subtracting like terms. So in some of these they're going to ask you to find the products using distributive property, and that means we need to find every distributor. So in this case in number 10, 3 is a distributor for that, and multiply it into the expressions. We also worked on recognizing when distributors were negative, that the negative, the sign with it, also needed to distribute in. So first in this terms, we would have come up with just the products, meaning the multiplied values, 6x. Then that 3 distributor multiplied by the minus 4 is negative 12 from the first set of distributing. And the second set, that negative 2 times 3x is negative 6x. And a negative 2 times a negative 1 is a plus 2. Then as you go to combine like terms, you're going to notice that some of these things are actually going to cancel. So now I'm done multiplying. I want to think about adding and subtracting. And as many x's as I have, subtract out later so there are no x in my final total. And negative 12 plus 2, we're left with a total of negative 10. Not all of them will come down to a single value, but you want to be sure you recognize the sum of all your like terms. So then we were using that in ones like number 12, where you were expected to solve an equation where there was some distribution and then some solving to be done. So you always want to distribute because that's part of that parentheses or grouping step in order of operations. So if I distribute that 2 and add 3x on the same side, it's equal to 4x plus 10. Here's where some people then, with good intentions, made some mistakes in their equation solving. Instead of combining like terms only on one side, they tried to combine every x they ever saw. However, there's an equal sign in the middle, and that's where you have to stop combining like terms. It only works on each expression on each side. So on this side, they're listed separately, but that really means that on this side there's a total of 5x plus 6. And on the other side, there's no like terms to combine, 4x plus 10. So we've got to do all that and kind of simplify before we can actually start solving, meaning moving things from side to side. So now that each side is simplified, now we can go ahead and start to actually solve, which means inverse operations operating on both sides. And I'll switch colors so that we've got a different color. So I would bring both my x terms to the same side. In my case, I'm choosing to subtract the 4x's. You could also subtract 5x's from each side. So I will have 1x, or just x, plus 6 equals 10. Then subtracting 6 to get that x term alone. I've got that 1x, which is really just x, is 4. So if you want to think in those terms, our x value's 4. Then you've got to be willing and able to multiply out some bigger products. So the last ones on this video are when we multiplied out multiple distributions. So when we multiplied a trinomial, this 3-term expression, by a binomial, a 2-term expression, that means we're going to have 3 things distributing over 2 things. So I've got this first distributor that's got to distribute over both terms. Then I've got this second distributor that's going to have to distribute over both terms. And then, this is where it got fun, we've got that third negative 1 distributor that's got to distribute all over. So in looking at all those arrows, it can be a bit of a headache, so let's take this one at a time. Let's go back to a good color. So I'm going to take my first distributor and distribute that. So I've got that 4x squared that's going to have to multiply by those 2, so that's going to give me a 5 times 4, 20, x to the second times x is x to the third, minus 4 times 3 is 12, and x squared. Now I'm going to take my next distributor, different color there, take my next distributor, which is the 2x term, and that needs to distribute over those terms. So 2x times 5x is positive 10 for the 2 values that are numbers, and x times x is x squared. 2x times negative 3, so negative 3 times 2 is negative 6x. And finally, I need to take that negative 1 and distribute it. Doesn't look like negative 1 when I do that, does it? Need to take that negative 1 and distribute it. So I'm going to take that, and that makes a negative 5x, and negative 1 times negative 3 is positive 3. Now that I've done all the distributions, now I want to go through and combine like terms. So I really have to stop thinking about multiplying when I get here, and now start to think about simplifying, combining like terms, and keeping it in standard form. So as I see a 20x cubed and no other x cubes. I see a whole bunch of x squared terms, so I have a negative 2x squared. Please use your calculator when you're combining these if you're not sure. Negative 6x minus 5 more x's is negative 11x. And we have a positive 3. And the final product is one that looks like something that we've tackled before, and we had a plan. Whenever we see a squared quantity and they want us to simplify it, what we want to think about is write out 2 sets of it. You cannot just square the 3x and square the 5, and you'll see that in a minute. So what it means is to multiply 2 sets of it. Then we can carry out the double distribution, or sometimes referred to as FOIL, that will need to happen to carry this out. And some of you really like those arrows to remind you of what terms you were going to be multiplying. So my first terms, 3x times 3x, is 3 times 3, x times x. 3x times 5 is 3 times 5 times x. Then I'm done with that distributing of the first value. Now I'm ready to distribute the plus 5, which that'll give me a 15x and a 25. Again, now I'm done multiplying out. Now I want to think about combining my like terms. So I'm going to go through and I have 9x squareds plus 30x plus 25. So go and finish some of those other multiplying ones in there, and be sure to leave your work.